Hi, this is Alicia Salinas from Child Development and Family Studies 319 with Nicole Smith. And this is my video on the simple / double ABCX model by Hill 1958 and McCubbin and Patterson 1983. So the simple ABCX model is the crisis proneness and freedom from the crisis among families. We have the A factor, B factor, C factor all interacting, which concludes in the crisis. Our A factor is the crisis precipitating event / stressor. Sometimes it happens from lack of preparation of the event, and the way families are prepared is the way they're going to view it, either problematic or room for growth. It can be something as in like a change in the family's organization, how the family has to adjust to this event. Some stresses include whether it comes from within the person or if it comes towards the person from the environment. Qualitative, which is how bad the situation is, how bad it's viewed, the negative or positive aspects of it. Quantitative is how often the event occurs, or even if it's an ongoing thing, such as an illness. And some of the hardships are such as like a parent joining the military, a baby in the family, or a family member that is undergoing substance abuse. Our B factor is the crisis meeting resources. So it's either the presence or the absence of the factors, whether one is going to aid the family into doing it and getting through the problem, or if it's going to be absent from their resources and it's going to keep them from moving forward. So the adequacy would be like proofness, inadequacy would be proneness, so anything that is adequate for the family will help them will resolve in proofness of the crisis, and if it's an inadequate resource, then they're more prone to go through the crisis. There's coping resources, which is integration, whatever the family integrates into their family adjustments and changes in how they adjust to applying the resources that they receive. And then adaptability, where they again adapt to the changes and the circumstances of their family structure and how it is now compared to how they've been used to. Material resources, which is the wealth of the family, what's their socioeconomic status, what's their background, what are the resources already available at hand for them, what is something they might need. Assets will help them achieve and receive the help they actually need if they have it. And it's also involving the cognitive, emotional, community, and spiritual resources. C factor is the family's definition and perception of the event. If it's crisis producing or provoking, then they're more prone for it to affect them as a family as a whole. If it's crisis precipitating, then it's proofness because it's avoiding or moving away, removing themselves from the crisis or the negativity, the negative aspects of the crisis. They're also bound to do the self-fulfilling prophecy. So if they already have a mindset that it's not going to work out, and then they try something already viewing it in a negative way, it's going to affect them and make them think, I knew it, it's not working. So they're just, again, going in a circle, self-fulfilling that own thought. The views of the stressor, whether they're positive or negative, again, positive, there's room for growth, and negative is that they can't move forward from the crisis or the issue, the stressor, the event, anything that's leading up to the crisis. It also depends individually and the family as a whole, and the overall well-being and functioning. So if the individual themselves is able to bring in more positive aspects, and the family as a whole can view it as a positive aspect, then it's more likely that it'll work out. But it needs to be individually and the family as a whole to make it function. And then there's also internal and external blame, again, either coming from within the person or the environment coming towards the person. And then we have the X factor, which is the crisis, and it's the actual stress, and again it's the ABC factor all interacting to create the crisis. And the crisis occurs because there's a shift in role patterns, whether it's the mother or the father being absent, and they have to fulfill that role within the family. Expectations of what everybody is expected to bring to the table, and it even affects the sexual area in some circumstances. One of the things to focus on is how the crisis was created, and we need to keep in mind that there's variations in types and effects of it. So not every single family is, their equilibrium is always stable. Sometimes something happens and it'll throw that off, or another person, again, in the individual aspect, it depends whether the person is okay enough to surpass that, or if it's going to let them affect it, and how that ripples into the family, and how the family as a whole takes it and moves forward with it. But we always try to mitigate and avoid. And now we're moving on to the double ABCX model, which is a curvy linear model underlying the coping and adaptation factors. And we have the double A factor, which is the pile-up. This double ABC and the double A factor includes everything from the simple A factor, but it also includes ambiguity, which is either boundary, which is like, I believe it was within the family, and social, which is community-based. There's also additional life stressors and strains. So anything outside the event or the stressor, there's additional little things always getting to us, and that also adds on to the pile-up. And sometimes it's an ongoing illness or separation, such as a family divorce, parents splitting up and the children having to deal with that, or a family member who's very sick and ill, and who knows, it can last for years, and that takes a toll on the family in general. There's a double B resource. Again, it's all the things included in the simple B factor into the double B factor, but it also includes new resources, which is psychological, social, intrafamiliar resources, which are the new ones. There's also social support, so whether the family reaches out for social support, or they find support groups who are people that are going through similar things that they're going through, and maybe getting a new set of eyes or a new point of view of the situation. That way it can change your mentality and hopefully help you to get through that. And then there's when there's successful adaptation, it's because the family is applying the resources that they're able to receive, and they apply it to their family and integrate and bring that into play for a successful adaptation to the changes. And this will minimize the vulnerability that they have of being prone to letting the event or the stressor affect them in a negative way. Then we have the double C factor, and here is the perception of the crisis, the pile-up, and our existing/new resources. And here is the precipitation of the crisis, stressor, and available resources. Our perception are the interpretations we have of the event or stressor, which is influenced by our family values, beliefs, and the structure of the family. Effective use of the resources is very important. Then we have the coping factor, which is BC, and it's manifested actions. So again, whatever gets integrated or applied into family, they're putting it into action, which is helping them form a perception, a new perception of the event, and how they can get through it in a positive view. There's also the actions that are applied. It influences how well the family adapts to those changes, and with the new perception and influences that they have, it's redefining the situation. And again, if it's viewed as positive, it's more as a challenge for growth rather than viewing it in a negative aspect and making them think that this is something that they can't get through or that they aren't able to get through as a family or as a whole, as an individual. And then when it's viewed positively, it's viewed as something you can control, and if you can control something, you're automatically going to give responsive efforts into the situation. And then we have the double X factor, which is there's different types of adaptations. There's a range between bone adaptation, which is a positive thing, and then maladaptation, which is a negative thing. It has to do, again, whether it's a short-term crisis, is it something that's just momentarily, and it doesn't, although it does create a shift in the family structure, it doesn't really change the organization that they have. If it's long-term, then it's more likely to be to throw off the family's equilibrium and the balance that they have, such as, let's say, when a parent goes to the military, sometimes it's months, sometimes it's years, so that'll definitely take a toll on them. And this has to do with the family resilience, so how well they say bounce back from the situation, what they do to overcome the situation, to get past it individually and as a family. And the important part as well is member to family and or family to community functioning levels. Again, it's either within the family and every individual in the family, how they integrate and how they connect and form their views and their perceptions of the event and how they can move forward. And then it's the family as a whole, out to the community, again, forming social groups, going to social support, receiving social support. And the double ABCX model also includes the pre-crisis, which is the stressor, resources, and the definition of it. So it's our initial stressors, our existing resources, and our perception of A. And then we have the crisis, which is all of the double ABCX model, including the post-crisis variables. And then we have post-crisis, which is all the variables. And that concludes my video for the simple ABCX model and the double ABCX model.